interesting when people when you get applause before you start, right? It's like, you guys don't know what you're in for. This could be awful. But one thing I do want to ask is that, so you're all here in the Entrepreneurship Lecture Series. Why? How many people here want to be an entrepreneur? Okay, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Yeah.
Money.
Oh, money. Who said money?
That was me.
Okay, cash money. There we go. Up in the top in the cap. You had your hand raised still. Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Yeah, BYU hat. Yeah.
So it's been my dream. My dad was an entrepreneur, and sounds awesome.
What about it sounds awesome to you?
I want to be able to set my own schedule. I want to be able to accomplish what I set my mind to.
Awesome. Okay, why else? Thank you. Why else do you guys want to be an entrepreneur? Yeah.
I feel like I really want to accomplish things that are extraordinary, and I feel like I can't do that sitting at a desk at a regular job.
Oh, man, I love that. You just get up here and give this lecture because you're like 6 months behind me, right? I love that. That's awesome. And I think there's a lot of reasons why to be an entrepreneur. So for me, as Scott said, my father was a professional football player. My mother was a model. And I got my dad's looks and mother's athletic ability, which meant nobody would hire me. So I became an entrepreneur, right? But really though, it's like, why do we want to be an entrepreneur? Why do we want to go through all this hard stuff? And speaking of hard things, one of the hardest things that I ever did before I was an entrepreneur was dating, right? For my wife, it's probably being married to me. But one of the things that I want to talk about, though, is yes, I really did go on 1,000 dates. Yes, I really did write a book about it. It's called Dating Never Works Until It Does. And the forward is, oh boy. And the forward is by his wife. So that's like a little stamp of, there you go, he finished the race. And here she is. She's really awesome. So I've got a something-month-old, and my wife would tell me how old he was, but he's not a year, and he's not 3 months. So, and then I've got my little 2-year-old, and she is awesome. So anyway, the reason I want to start with this is because, honestly, what else is there? I'm referring to this, not this. What else is there? That is what brings me so much joy. And if everything failed and I had to become, a janitor at some junior high, and I got to come home to my family every day, I'd be a happy man. But that being said, just because I'm a family man doesn't mean I can't have a little bit of fun. Whoa, that's me in New Orleans. Needless to say, I did not ask how they got the beads. And that is her husband on the phone right there. I was like, hey, is it okay if she gives me a kiss? And he goes, no. And I said, great. Anyway, so it's still important to have fun. But with all of this, I want to talk about 2 things that I've learned not from necessarily my experiences, but from what I've learned from other people. The second one we're going to talk about for the duration of the time. So the first thing is that the backyard is always on fire. What do I mean by that? You hear about all these stories of these entrepreneurs, and you've had a lot of entrepreneurs come into this class, and unlike me, some have probably been really successful, right? And they're way down, and they've done a lot of stuff. Let me tell you, no matter who they are, when you get down one-on-one with them, and you're chatting, and you're saying, Brandon, what's going on? Josh, tell me about yourself. How's business going? And you say, no, but really, okay? They'll tell you about the backyard. Because LinkedIn and all these press releases, they're all talking about the front yard. By the way, is it? Okay, I just realized that. Maybe it's not up on the screen. Yeah. They're all talking about the front yard because the front yard looks great, okay? But the backyard is always on fire. The grass is never greener. And just know that if you want to be an entrepreneur, that's something that you're going to have to deal with, okay? Is that the backyard is always on fire. The key is just don't let it get to the house, okay? And this is where, quite frankly, this is where imposter syndrome comes into play. So my father has won 3 Super Bowls, 5 Pro Bowl appearances. He was pretty good, okay? And but when he was inducted into the New Jersey Hall of Fame, this was last month, he didn't even like invite me to go to the party because he was like, it's not a big deal. He's like, look, I really don't deserve it. They just like, he's like, there's people like LT and Bill Parcells and all these great people who probably should get it before me. And I'm like, look, Dad, yeah, maybe you jumped the line, but end of the day, like, you deserve it. And it's crazy. Like, I went to a Super Bowl party with him once, and there was all of these gold jackets around. And you get a gold jacket when you get into the Hall of Fame. And so my wife was going around getting everyone's autograph, and she brought it to my dad and was like, hey, you should sign it too. And he's like, oh, whoa, I'm not signing that. Those signatures are like for the real guys. So let me tell you, no matter what level you're at, imposter syndrome is real because you know all of the nitty gritty. You know the flaws. And doesn't that go not just for business, but for ourselves as well? So make sure you're giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. Okay, second thing that we're going to talk about today, the key to a successful startup. This is, again, not just from my experience, but this is what I've talked to some of the best entrepreneurs in the world, especially when I was at 500 startups. I got to meet all these incredible entrepreneurs. Everyone's story has the same arc. They stayed alive and excited long enough to get lucky, okay? That is what people have done in startups. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go through a couple of businesses that I've been a part of, either as a co-founder, as a CEO, and I'm going to talk to you about how we stayed alive and excited long enough to not get lucky, because we didn't stay alive and excited long enough. So let's talk about that for a little bit. There we go. Okay, first of all, I'm going to talk to you about Imply Labs. So Imply Labs was a company that I started just out of school. I graduated in 2009. I went out to New York City. I got my dream job, and I hated it. It was awful. How many people here are studying advertising? Oh, man. Okay, give me a call after if you have any questions. But there's a lot of people who love advertising. They do a great job in it. When I went there, I just realized it wasn't for me. So what did I do? I quit, and I did what any millennial does and, like, travel the world in credit card debt, right? Like, yeah, and wrote a book that didn't know anything about how to write a book. But I was like, I'm going to write a book and travel. And so that's what I did, right? Didn't quite blow up like Eat, Pray, Love, but whatever. But I did have this idea for a business. So I go to one of my buddies, and I'm starting to chat with him. I know nothing about business. I remember one time I went to go see an investor, and the investor said, can you send me your cap table? And I was like, yeah, sure. Can I send it to you tonight? He goes, yeah, great. And I wrote down, look up what a cap table is. I didn't even know what a cap table was, and here I am trying to raise money. For those of you who don't know, a cap table is a capitalization table that shows how the ownership of the company is broken up. Okay, so I really didn't know a lot, but I raised $250,000 on a PowerPoint and a lot of spunk, right? So I just went around and I said, found some rich people and convinced them that they should give me some money, and they did. And in 2009, right after the recession, when especially people who had just bought in all these real estate deals that were really distressed, and people were just right then people were feeling good about giving money, and so things were on the bounce back, so they were just writing me checks. So now, did I stay alive? Well, here's the thing. $250,000 seems like a lot of money, but we had a pretty high burn because I had to hire a really good CTO, because what Imply Labs did was I developed an algorithm to translate unstructured social media data into gift recommendations, okay? Now, I studied advertising, which means I knew nothing about algorithms, statistics. I knew about social media, right? Like how to post. That was what my degree got me. So, no offense, I'm sure it's a lot better now. But don't worry, you'll be great. I can tell by your hair. So, here's what happened though. One of the things that we didn't do was we weren't focused on the right customers with Imply Labs. So I took this idea of this algorithm and I took it to end users. And I said, okay, end users, what do you think about this idea? Did I just totally ruin this whole thing, Bridger? Are we okay? No. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to put that there so we don't lose that. Okay, so I went to the end users and I said, hey, here's this idea, here's this concept, would you use it? And everyone was just raving reviews. Yes, I would use it, it's awesome. I put up the prototype. It was killing it. People loved it. Here's the problem. The end users weren't going to be the ones who were going to be the financial users, meaning that my customer, the person who was going to open up the purse strings and give me money, wasn't the end user, but it was someone else, because I couldn't build a business off of this algorithm. I had to sell the algorithm to companies like Amazon, companies like Walmart, like Sears, like Zappos. They had to buy the algorithm, and then their end users would use it, right? So here's the problem. I didn't do any research on the financial user because I didn't even think about that. And so then I started going in there and started doing research with the financial user. Turns out, as we got into it, we got down the pipeline with some pretty big companies. In comes the technical users. Okay, now once they decide to use it, there's got to be someone who actually puts it onto the website, right? I had done no validation with them. And so it's really important that if you're trying to keep a company alive, which most people are, you need to know who your customers are, all of your customers, and make sure that you're doing the right validation with the right customers, okay? Second point, did I stay excited? Look, it was like a really big idea. This was what people referred to as the holy grail of e-commerce by connecting the social media and e-commerce platforms. So it was a great idea, really excited. The problem is I had two people on my cap table, now that we all know what that is. I had two people on my cap table who owned combined 40% of my company, 20% each. No vesting schedule, meaning that from day one, boom, they got the 20% each. It was really good for one of them. He helped me raise. He was a really cool guy. I proposed to his daughter. I'm still, she said no, but that's okay. We just went to lunch this week, like still good friends, or last week. But the other guy didn't answer my phone calls for a year and a half. And he owned 20% of my company. And here's what's to boot more, is that our first investor, here I am, like thinking I'm so cool, raising $250,000. Well, guess what? There was an anti-dilution clause in that investor deck, in that investor meeting, which meant that no matter how much money we raised, they would always have the same percentage of the company. Now, those two things alone meant that my value in the business went from 100% down to 30% within a matter of one pre-seed round of $250,000. So it's pretty tough to stay excited when you know that you're going to have to do a series seed and an A and a B, and all of a sudden you're doing the math and you're like, what is 0.5% of this company worth? So it's pretty hard to stay excited. Lucky, well, not even close. We did sell, but it was at a huge loss. And it was one of these challenging things for me, because why would I feel like so inspired, so excited to do this company? Like, I remember when the idea came to me, and it was like exactly like people describe Revelation, where just like the heavens open, just like a deluge of knowledge. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I wrote it down, wrote the business plan out, and the whole business was like ready to go right then, within like a half day. Like, why would it fail? And we'll get to that in a second. But that was really hard for me. But you get over it, you overcome, and you start something else. So my lessons from Imply Labs are this. One, know your customers, okay? Know who they are, know how to talk to them, and especially know who is paying you and what do they want, okay? Hashtag the notebook. What do you want? Okay. Next, everybody vests. You vest, they vest, okay? If they're not vesting, you won't get the investors, okay? Lastly, financial projections are key. We didn't have our model built out very well to know how we were going to make money, and so we ran out of it, okay? So financial projections are key. And keep in mind, there's 7 lessons, so these are your first 3. The next company, there was a coupon company, okay? Who remembers the day of like, the coupon craze, right? Yeah, wasn't that fun? Although I did, this is not an endorsement of Groupon, but I did just buy a 5-day all-inclusive, including flights, Jamaica trip for $1,400 for 2 people. Isn't that pretty good? I thought that was pretty good, right? Yeah. Anyway, booked that last night. So coupon company. So did we stay alive? So here's the thing about the coupon company. It was started by 10, you heard me right, 10 people, 10 founders of this coupon company. And we raised $1 million. But here's the thing. The founder's salary was over $150 a month. $150,000 a month. Wow, $150,000 a month. That was just the founder's salary, not including like the technical people. They hired a team of like 15 tech people. They outsourced an entire sales team. All of a sudden, the costs start ramping up. So we raised $1 million, had $150K in founder salary. By the way, this was all pre-revenue. Pre-revenue. They were paying themselves that much. I wasn't getting paid that much. But so I remember one time we were at a meeting, and I slammed my hands down on the table, and I was like, if we keep spending like this, we will go out of business. And everyone was just like, yeah, but it's all about the... I'm like, no. Like, we just can't keep spending like this on the hopes of revenue. So did we stay alive? Here's one of the problems, too. With this company, there's all these founders, 10 founders. You think that with 10 founders, what would everyone be doing? One guy to build it and 9 people to just go out there and sell it and sell it and sell it and sell it. No one made a single cold call. Nobody sold it. Now, everyone sat there and theorized, and they wrote up like 50-page playbooks on how to sell it, but they never sold it. So what happened next? Well, they tried to outsource sales. They hired a company to do cold calls for them because they didn't want to sell it, and that never works. So there was no real validation. There was no revenue. We raised some money. I loved everyone that was there, but in terms of getting excited, the problem was it was a great team but bad fit. Everyone there had just come from a huge 6-figure salary job, and they were all looking to continue to pay themselves at that 6-figure salary rate and then retire. They were all there to earn, right? And here I was, wet behind the ears, just excited about entrepreneurship. I was there to learn. And when you have such a difference of reasons for starting a business, there's bound to be friction. But luckily, with that cash burn, that friction didn't last very long. We never got a chance, never really went anywhere. But it was something that I learned a lot from. And here are 3 takeaways from that. So 1, know yours and know your partner's why, okay? Why are you starting the business? And if you don't know that, figure it out. And here's how you figure it out. One of the things that I do is called the $1 billion question. Ask yourself, if you had $1 billion deposited in your bank account today, what would you be doing in a year? After you've traveled to Jamaica on a more than $1,400 budget, after you've saved the orphans, after you've fixed your parents' mortgage or whatever, like after you've done all that stuff that I'm sure that you think you would do with $1 billion that you probably wouldn't, but you like to think that you would. What would you be doing in a year? What would your life be looking like? And then how many of you know the Toyota Kaizen? You guys heard of Kaizen? The 5 why methodology? Figure out what your schedule would look like for a week. And then ask yourself why. And then take that answer and ask yourself why. And ask yourself why. And ask yourself why. And ask yourself why. And once you ask yourself why 5 times, you're going to get to a pretty root reason of what you would be doing with $1 billion. And I submit to you that there is nothing that you could do with $1 billion that you can't fulfill the real reason why with $1 today. So I challenge you to try that out. Try the 5 why methodology. What would you do with $1 billion? And understand your why for starting a business. And understand your partner's why as well. Second, be obsessed with getting paying customers. If you don't have paying customers, look, sure, maybe you could be a Facebook. Maybe you could be a WeChat, right? Like, sure, there's customers, there's people that start businesses that don't make money, that become billionaires. I could guarantee you're not in this room, okay? Be smart. Get paying customers, okay? There's plenty of room to be mega millionaires with paying customers as opposed to being the chance of you becoming a billionaire with no paying customers. So get paying customers. If you don't have one paying customer, focus on getting one. There's nothing more important than that first paying customer. Once you get that first paying customer, what do you focus on next? The second paying customer, okay? Focus on that. And lastly, remember, financial projections are key. Every business that has failed because something in their financials was wrong. They made a wrong assumption. They didn't account for something. And here's why. There's like a handful of ways to make money, and there are an innumerable amount of ways to spend money. The IRS is going to come after you when you're not expecting it. An employee is going to hit you with a lawsuit. A competitor is going to come and steal one of your big customers. Like, there are so many ways to lose money, and there's so few ways to spend it. So it's easy to project how you're going to make money. It's hard to figure out how you're going to spend it. So that's why financial projections are key. By the way, Scott, what time do I have until? 4:20. Okay. Oh, that's right, 4:20. That's what he told me that. I don't know why you're laughing. Anyway, what are we talking about? Okay, dental marketing. Okay, so here's the next company. It was a dental marketing company because how original, right? No one's ever heard of a dental marketing company in Utah. So I was a part of one, and it's almost like the MLMs of yesteryear, right? It's like dental marketing. Anyway, so this dental marketing company, it had loads of debt, just debt on debt on debt, and almost no revenue. So it's really tough to stay alive when you're constantly having to try to pay off debt and you've got no money coming in, right? It's like okay revenue, but not great. And the numbers were never hit. And another thing to remember is like excited. Well, with this company, it was like kind of exciting. Like it was like tough to kind of get behind a dental marketing company. And then one of the things about, I love the CEO. We're still really good friends, but it's like he sometimes struggled with focusing on what to work on. Meaning that I'd go into the office, 8 a.m., 7 a.m., and we'd be working, like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, he would come into the office, and he'd be like, oh, man, I had such a late night. I was like, what were you doing? He was like, I was just like reviewing legal docs until 4. I was like, why? Like, why were you reviewing legal docs until 4? Like, I need you here in the morning to help get the team ready and like help do our scrum meetings. He's like, yeah, but like I needed to review these. And I was like, well, what are we going to use them for? He's like, well, in case we have like a really big customer we close, we need to have this. And I'm like, well, worry about that when we get a big customer to close. Or he'd be out, out doing, he'd come in at like, noon, 1, and he'd be like, oh man, I was up with the programmers last night. I was like, you program? He's like, well, no, but like I was getting them pizza and stuff. And I'm like, well, they can order pizza. Like, I need you here. And so it was really tough because not only did I feel like we had a misalignment of focus, but I felt like the space itself wasn't something that I was super excited in. And so we never really got like that vision. And so, I want to encourage you guys to think, not just in business, but in your life, like what is the most important thing you could be doing this week? What is the most important thing for your success that you could be doing today? And focus on that, okay? And then, did we ever get lucky? Not really. It just kind of like fizzled out. I was on a vesting schedule, and I left the day before my first cliff. By the way, does everyone here know what a vesting schedule is? No, okay. So a vesting schedule, this is something that's like super, super, super important. If you go and you're part of a startup, or you get some equity in a company, they're going to probably put you on a vesting schedule. Over the course of typical vesting schedule is 4 years, meaning that had I been smart in my first startup, I wouldn't have given each of them 20% day one, but they would have had an agreement to earn 20% over 4 years, okay? Which means it incentivizes them to stay with the company. It reduces my risk of a bad hire. And then what typically happens is until the end of the first year, they don't get any of the first quarter of that equity. Okay, so for the first quarter of that equity, they have to stay the first full year. And then the rest, the other 3 quarters of the equity, are divided up equally month by month. So that way, if they leave in 2 years, they only get 10% of the company. Does that make sense? So look it up, Investopedia, vesting schedule. It has more there than you'll ever need to know about it. But vesting schedules are super, super critical. So I left the day before my cliff, meaning the day before I was going to vest the first quarter of my equity, just because I didn't want to get involved legally in like giving the equity back or them buying it. I was just like, look, if you guys can be successful, like do it. But when I left, a bunch of other people left, and that 2 months later, the company folded. But he's gone on since to start something else way better and has realized like the importance of focusing on what drives revenue. But that was an awesome lesson for me to learn. And here's some of the lessons. Work hard and smart. Okay? It's not about just working hard. It's about working hard and smart. And the other thing is that as we were growing and as we were figuring out what we needed to do, we never focused on our path to success, our path to prosperity, because we didn't have great financial projections, okay? By the way, how many here think they're pretty good at Excel? Okay, anyone who's raising their hand, everybody look around and note who those people are and then ask them to help you with your business, okay? Because it is so important to have really good financial projections. Okay, now, last thing I want to talk about is Ovation. That's what I'm doing right now. It's called Ovation because we help businesses find the ovation they deserve. And so at Ovation, one of the things is that are we alive? Well, hey, we're still chugging. We're still there. So we started off the first 2 years totally bootstrapped, learning the lessons from the dental marketing company, learning the lessons from the coupon company. I realized the most important thing I needed to do was get out there and sell. And so we went out there, and I quit my nice, cushy 6-figure job and went out and started selling to like these single location deals. And it was a slodge, guys. It was pretty rough. But we got through it, but bootstrapping it was really, really tough. But it needed to happen because that's what the financials said. The financials were like, we can't afford to raise money right now. We can't afford to do anything but sell, sell, sell. So we went out there and we got obsessed with the first customer, then the second, then the third. And we 4X'd the company in 2018. We 4X'd the company this year. We're working on 4X'ing the company next year, right? And it's all through, most of those sales have come from founders, right? And now we're transitioning into salespeople where they're the majority of the sales now month to month, which is awesome. But one of the things that we did with the financial projections is I way overcompensated for what we were looking at to spend and undercompensated for what we were expecting to come in, which meant that every single month we have been at about 80% of our burn. So our financial projections show that we'll run out of money this month, but in reality, it's going to get us to profitability. But if we're acting this month as if we needed to get to profitability, then we could do that. And we've been really successful at managing our cash flow, which is so important. Another thing is learning from before is how do we get into it with getting involved with the customers, right? You are going to want to outsource your sales really quickly because sales sometimes can be tough. You wake up every morning, you're cold calling all day, all afternoon, you're driving around all the way up to Ogden to go visit a pizza shop who ends up not showing up. Yeah. And then You go back up there again to sell them, only to 3 months later have them cancel. And it's like, man, how am I ever going to grow a business? So the key is, as you get in there and as you get to learn who your customers are, and you get to learn who are the right customers, who are the customers you want to have, and you realize that a single location pizza place in Ogden is not who you want to be selling to, that's a great way to help you stay alive and stay excited. Because here's the thing, quite frankly, by the way, what does Ovation do? Good question, Zach. Ovation is a customer experience and engagement platform. We help restaurants and retailers to measure customer experience, to get reviews, fix operational issues, and bring customers back through text marketing. So as we were going about it, it was like, so that's one of the things, right? We're talking about brick and mortar spaces. We're not talking about like cutting edge crypto, whatever, in AI, BI stuff, right? Like we're talking about like brick and mortar businesses. So it's a little bit tough to stay excited, but the two things that we do to keep excited are, one, we focus on really what we're doing. And what we're doing is relationships. What we're doing is we're helping businesses to build relationships with their customers. And that's something that's exciting because that's focusing on the why of what we're doing as opposed to just like the here and now. The second thing that we do is culture. So culture, it is like, that's one of the things that you talk to anyone at Ovation and they are just so excited about the culture. Like one thing that we do every week, it's super fun. We do an all hands meeting and everybody gets a bonus every single month that they have to give. They can't keep it. They have to give it to someone else at the Ovation team. And we have 5 values in Ovation, and they will say, hey, I saw Delana, exhibit this Ovation value when she did XYZ. And then we all cheer for her, and we give her the cash right on the spot. And then she gets to choose, does she want to keep it or does she want to put it in a pot? And then everyone gets to everyone who wants to keep it, they can, but if they want to put it in a pot, they can. Then we spin a big wheel, and whoever gets the lowest number gets the whole pot. So it's one of these things that we do just to help us express gratitude to each other. And it's a really fun practice. And in any of your future companies, highly recommend a monthly bonus to give. It's a really fun thing that keeps the culture going. In terms of alive, excited, and lucky, well, let's talk about a little more excited. So alive, as I've talked about, alive is all about having the money to do what you want to do, having the money to stay around. Excited, that's all about trying new things, pivoting, growing, not being afraid to move and shift, and not being afraid to go to a completely different vertical or a completely different business model, to stay excited and keep trying new things and be pumped about the business. Because at the end of the day, guys, it's gonna be hard. Entrepreneurship is not easy, and here's when it's hard. It's hard when we've got to pivot and go from an in-person sales model to a virtual sales model and take 2 months of no revenue because we're making this pivot. That's a really hard pivot to make, and the kind of pivot that makes you feel sick, It's hard when you leave a cushy 6-figure job when your wife is pregnant, you have a little kid, and what are you going to do? They're looking at you for support, and you're letting them know that you're going to leave all this behind. Now, by the way, quick caveat. One thing that my wife and I did was we took $15,000 and we set it aside. We put it in a bank account that we don't look at, we don't track. It's not in our Mint account. It's totally aside. The rule is, when our bank account gets to 0, I have to quit. And then we use that $15K to go on a killer vacation, and then I go find a job, okay? So that's the deal my wife and I made. Whatever deal you and your SO, your significant other, make, that's fine. But what I would encourage you to do is you need to have commitment to something, right? You need to commit to it to make it work. But at the end of the day, 90% of the time it won't. But you need to act every single day as if you are the 10%, because why not? Why not you? But at the end of the day, you need to have some kind of a ripcord, especially if you have a family that you're responsible for. that you can have that limit. But it's hard as we're getting down and we see our bank account getting closer and closer and closer to that zero. We were 2 months away, and Ovation had $2,000 left. Payday was 3 days away. Like, that's not a good December. That was 1 year ago. That was a pretty rough Christmas. How am I going to tell my team that I can't pay them on Christmas? How am I going to tell my wife that here we are living in San Francisco for 500 startups, which is a really amazing accelerator program that we got super lucky to get into. We're going to get into lucky in a second. But yeah, she sacrificed to come out here and live in a closet for $3,500 a month in downtown San Francisco, and we're out of money. Like, those aren't easy conversations to have. And what's even harder is, when the doctor carts in the needle? Isn't that just the worst part? I got a bone transplant, and I remember when I was there getting ready for the operation, they removed a chunk of my tibia, and they put in cadaver bone. And when they did that, I remember I went there to the hospital, and I didn't care about the surgery. I just didn't want the IV. And I wasn't 4 years old. I was a grown man. And I was like, no, not the IV. Anyway. So we got the IV, we survived, and that's okay. And now I can tell when it's going to rain. So, yeah, me and your grandpa. But it gets hard. And so have a good culture, focus on the why. And here's the thing, right? It's not just about getting hard on the business level, but last year was also a pretty rough year because we were so excited to find out that my wife was pregnant. And we were super stoked, shared it with everyone. And, she went in for a routine checkup. And she came home. And, I called her just to see how things were going. And she said that we needed to talk. And when she walked in the door, she was crying. And she said the doctor couldn't find a heartbeat. And here I am, this little startup. We just left this nice cushy job with great health insurance. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew that we lost our baby. And after that, we went to, I had a meeting to meet with a single location Thai restaurant to sign them up. And as I went to drive over there, I was feeling super bummed out. And I show up, and the guy stood me up, which you think I'd be used to after going on 1,000 dates, but the sting still hurts. And then I was like, my gosh, this is rough. And so I know there's a customer nearby who's having some trouble. So I was like, I'll just go over there and just fix some of the problems they're having with their tech. So as I'm driving over there and I'm thinking to myself, here I am, the CEO, getting stood up by a single location deal that we're going to lose money on anyway. We just lost a baby. Driving to a customer who's having all these issues, and bam, I hit a car. That was just a really bad day. So when that happens, how do you stay excited? Viktor Frankl, he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. If you haven't read it, please do, at least the first half. The whole thing. The second half has mixed reviews. But the first half for sure, though, yeah. Second half is good, too. All about logotherapy and positive psychology. But he was a psychologist who went through Auschwitz and survived. And he kind of talks about it from a very clinical perspective, from getting his PhD in psychology. What does that mean, and how do you survive something like Auschwitz? Man's Search for Meaning, outside of Scripture, that book has changed my life more than any other book. So that's a quick freebie. But in that book, he says, the man who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And that's why I was asking, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Because unless you know why, when the how gets tough, it's real easy to quit. So what did I do? Well, I got home, I cried with my wife a little bit. We hugged each other. And then we said, you know what? Let's buy a cruise. And so we did. We got a cruise. We figured if we're going to spend money for hospital and the car and not making that deal, might as well buy a cruise. And so we did. And it was a great purchase. And we had a great Thanksgiving. And on that cruise, we were able to announce that she was pregnant again. And that's my something-month-old. That's just awesome. And then as far as lucky goes, we have gotten lucky a lot of times. As I told you, we were just about to, it was the summertime. We weren't sure what we were going to do next. We knew we needed to raise money. We knew we needed to get some advisors. And so on a total whim, I applied to 500 startups, one of the greatest accelerator programs in the world. The 2,000 companies apply every batch. They only accept 20. And I was like, there's no way, but let's go for it. Let's go for it. So we did. And we got to our application got past the first round, right? I was kind of sassy in my application, so I think they thought that was kind of funny. And then I had this interview, this phone call, and I'm talking with them on the phone, and she's kind of like, meh. And so she tried to end the interview early. And I said, Rebecca, do you mind if I ask you a question? I know we got a couple minutes left. And she's like, yes. And I said, it seems to me like you don't like this company very much. And she's like, I don't. And I was like, well, let me tell you why you're going to love it. What we're doing is working on bridging the gap between the digital consumer and the physical world, and this problem isn't going anywhere. It's going to be huge. And I know that you think this is some lifestyle business, but I didn't leave a cushy six-figure job to start a lifestyle business. I want to make an impact in the world, and I think that 500 startups could help me. And she goes, all right, you can go on to the next round. So I go on to the next round. And here I am getting grilled by all these people. My co-founders are there with me. We happen to schedule it as we did an offsite. And we're all there together. And they're just grilling us, peppering us with these questions. I accidentally called the name of the company wrong. And everything was like disaster. But it just so happens there was one person in that interview who really liked the idea of bridging the digital and the physical. And he was super stoked on it. Turns out he was just like an advisor and was there just for the interview process. But he liked us so much that he was the only one that got us on to the next round. And then they flew us all out to San Francisco. And we were there, and we took these personality tests. And there was this crazy Russian guy. And he was like, he loved these personality tests. And my co-founder and I scored really high randomly on this test. And so he was like, I do not care if business sucks. They are in. And so we got in. It was like, and so out of 2,000 companies, here we are, we got in. And we were just so excited to get there. I get there the first day, and the managing director of the whole thing says, oh, you're the Utah guy, right? And I was like, yeah, ovation. He goes, yeah, I remember you. I go, yeah, why? He goes, because if somebody sneezed differently, you wouldn't be here. I was like, oh, okay. And that was my grand welcome into San Francisco startup life. I came out with few scars, but I did come out with all birds, so that's okay. Anyway, and then as far as the money goes, right? It was literally down to the days of running before we ran out of money. And then boom, 100K hit the bank from an investor. And it was just crazy. As far as raising money goes, we just raised $1 million, which some of you are like, whoa, and those of you who know are like, oh, okay. So I didn't call my rich uncle and ask him for $1 million. I went through 130 investor meetings before I raised $1 million. I had to call in some favors from I went through my first 30 meetings, and the only guy that gave us money was this Japanese guy who I'm not sure even knows what we do. But at the very end of our meeting, he just goes, you are very convincing. He goes, send me via instruction, and gave me 25 grand. And so then another 25 meetings goes by, nothing. So I call up Steve Young. And I'm like, hey, Uncle Steve-O, because my dad and him played together here and at the Niners. And I'm like, Stevie, what's up? How about some love for your little nephew, Zach? And he's like, sure, I'll give you 25K. And I was like, oh. And it was more work for him to write that email than part ways with 25K probably. But then so here I am, right? I'm 50 meetings in. I have to raise $500,000. And I've got a couple minutes left. Oh, we're done. Oh, shoot, we're done. Okay, last thing. Wait, one more thing. Okay, lessons are financial keys to projection, but don't let it run your business. Last thing is know your customers. Everyone invest. be obsessed with first paying customers, know yours and your partner's why, work hard and smart. Financial connections are key. But remember, this is one thing I learned at Ovation, is that not every single thing that you do can be projected out. So take calculated risks. Okay, but last important thing, as was said, tell me your name again. I know we've met like so many times. What was your name? Yes. Mikey. Okay, as Mikey said, the most important thing to remember is choose extraordinary, for ordinary will always be waiting, all right? Because if you fail greatly. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the outcome. It's about what we become. And lastly, just remember this one scripture, Doctrine and Covenants 45:62. For verily I say unto you, I, the Lord, you is Mikey. You is the person sitting in your chair, not next to you, not behind you, not around you, not Scott. This is the Lord talking to you when he says, for verily I say unto you that great things await you. Thank you guys so much. Connect with me if you have any questions. Thank you.